My Amish neighbor Daniel grows more ginger in one 5-gallon bucket than most people manage in a whole raised bed. Here's the math. A single bucket on his porch gave him close to 4 pounds of ginger last fall, off one piece of root he started in spring. Most American gardeners who try ginger get a few thin, stringy fingers and call it a loss. The difference isn't the climate, it's the bucket, the soil mix, and the timing. Daniel's done it the same way for years, and after watching him, I asked him to walk me through it. Today I'll show you exactly how in 4 steps, and stick around to the end because there's a simple Amish trick for when to stop watering that decides whether your ginger ends up fat and firm or soft and disappointing. Let me be straight with you about that number. Close to 4 pounds of firm ginger, all of it pulled from one 5-gallon bucket on Daniel's porch, off a single palm-sized seed rhizome he started back in spring. Most American gardeners who try ginger end up with a few thin, stringy fingers, and they figure they did something wrong. They didn't exactly. They just started with the wrong root and the wrong soil. Here's where most folks go off the rails. They grab a knob of ginger from the grocery store, push it into a pot of heavy, soggy potting mix, and then dig it up after a few months expecting a harvest. Ginger doesn't work that way. It's a long season root, not a quick crop, and it wants loose, living soil that drains. Daniel's done it the same way for years, right there on his porch where I could watch. After watching him, I asked him to walk me through it, and that's what I'm handing you now in 4 steps. Step 1, we wake up the root. Step 2, we build the bucket in the soil mix. Step 3, we plant shallow and warm. Step 4, we feed and hill through the season. And stick with me to the end because that's where I'll share Daniel's simple trick for when to stop watering. Step 1, we wake up the root. The single biggest reason people fail before they even start is they grab whatever shriveled knob is sitting in the produce bin at the grocery store. Daniel doesn't do that, and neither do I anymore. You want organic seed ginger, a plump piece with smooth, taut skin and visible eyes. Those are the little pale nubs along the knuckles, the same as the eyes on a seed potato. Those eyes are where your shoots come from. Pick a piece about the size of your palm, firm, with no soft spots. The night before, I soak it in a bowl of room temperature water overnight, 8 to 12 hours. Grocery ginger is often treated with a sprout inhibitor to keep it from growing on the shelf, and a soak helps rinse some of it off, but honestly, the better answer is to not buy treated ginger in the first place. That's why organic seed ginger matters. It hasn't been sprayed to stop the very thing you're trying to make happen. Then comes the part most people skip. You pre-sprout it. I fill a shallow tray with damp finished compost, lay the rhizome on top and barely cover it. I keep that tray somewhere warm, 70 to 75 degrees, on top of the refrigerator works or near the wood stove. For 2 to 3 weeks, you keep that compost just damp, never wet. And here in Zone 6B, I start this in March because ginger needs every bit of an 8 to 10 month season, and our last frost doesn't clear until around April 25th. Here's where most people mess up. They get impatient or they use that grocery knob that's been sitting under a sprout inhibitor, and instead of waking up, it just sits there and goes mushy and rots. If your piece turns soft and brown in the tray, it was treated and no amount of warmth will save it. Start over with a clean, organic piece. But when it works, and with good seed ginger it almost always works, you'll see them, little green nubs, pushing up out of the compost like the tips of green crayons. That's your signal. The root is awake. That's the win for step 1, and you haven't even filled a bucket yet. Step 2, we build the bucket and the soil mix. Daniel grows his ginger on the porch in a plain 5-gallon bucket, the food-grade kind that once held something safe, not a chemical drum. The bucket is half the secret right there because it lets you do something a raised bed can't, and I'll get to that in step 4. First, the bucket has to drain. I flip it over and drill 6 to 8 holes in the bottom, each about a ½ inch across. Ginger will rot in standing water faster than almost anything you grow, so those holes are not optional. Now, the soil. This is where Daniel and I part ways with how most Americans were taught to fill a pot. We don't reach for a bag of potting mix off the shelf. The mix is 1/3 finished compost, 1/3 aged horse or cow manure, and I mean aged, dark and crumbly and odorless, not fresh, and 1/3 loosened loam or leaf mold to keep it draining free. Daniel pulls his manure from his own barn, composted down for a year. Mine comes from his pile, if I'm honest. You want that blend sitting right around a pH of 6 to 6.5, which is where ginger is happiest. Daniel Daniel told me once, the pile is the heartbeat of the garden. And that's the whole idea here. This is living soil, full of biology, the kind that feeds a plant slow and steady for 10 months. He doesn't own a rototiller, or never has in the 50 years he's been gardening, because he doesn't tear his soil apart. He builds it. This bucket mix is that same thinking, scaled down to something that fits on a porch. Here's where most people mess up. They use a dense, heavy potting mix, or worse, straight garden clay, and they pack it down tight. Water sits, air can't get in, and the rhizome rots from the bottom before it ever bulks up. If you squeeze a handful of your mix and it stays in a tight, muddy ball, it's wrong. It should crumble apart. And here's the part that trips folks up even when the mix is right. You only fill the bucket halfway at planting. Just halfway. I'll tell you why in a minute. For now, the win for step 2 is simple. You pour water through that half-full bucket and it runs clean out the bottom in seconds. That's drainage. That's a bucket that won't drown your crop. Now, if what I'm walking you through here is making sense and you're starting to see how the Amish do this differently than the way most of us were taught, that it all comes back to living compost-rich soil, then you'll want what's in my book. It's called the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol, and Chapter 4 is all about building that strong, biologically alive soil that grows stronger plants and stronger roots. The exact thinking behind this bucket. It's $17 at backyardbuildbooks.com. If you're watching on your TV, grab your phone and point it at the QR code on the screen. Take your time. I'll be right here. If you're on a phone or laptop, the link is right down in the description. All right, let's keep going. Step 3. We plant shallow and warm. Take your pre-sprouted rhizome and lay it flat on top of that half-filled bucket horizontal with the buds, those green nubs, facing up toward the sky. 1 palm-sized piece per bucket is plenty. Then cover it with just 2 inches of your soil mix, no deeper. Ginger is a shallow-rooted plant. It grows sideways near the surface, not down like a carrot. So burying it deep only makes it struggle to push up. Now, placement. Daniel sets his buckets on the porch on the south and east side where they catch the gentle morning sun and then sit in the shade through the hot afternoon. Ginger comes from the jungle floor. It wants warmth but not blazing direct all-day sun. The sweet spot is 75 to 85 degrees. On his porch, the boards hold a little heat, the roof breaks the harshest light, and the plant is happy. Daniel walks those buckets every morning with his coffee just looking. He told me once, "You can't tend what you don't see, Bill." I picked up the same habit, and a bucket on the porch is about the easiest thing in the world to keep an eye on. Here's where most people mess up. They plant the rhizome 4 or 5 inches deep like a potato, or they set the bucket out in April in full blazing sun and cold nights, and the poor thing sulks. Ginger will rot if it's cold and wet, and it'll scorch if it's baking in direct sun with no afternoon break. If your nights are still dropping below 50, keep the bucket near the house or bring it in for the evening. Don't rush it outside just because the calendar says spring. Get it right though, and within 2 to 3 weeks, you'll see your first shoots break the surface. Narrow green spears, almost like young bamboo, pushing up out of that dark soil. The first time I saw them come up on my own porch, I'll be honest with you, I felt like I'd gotten away with something. That's the win for step 3. The plant is established and now it's just a matter of feeding it through the long haul. Step 4, we feed and hill through the season. This is the step that separates 4 pounds of ginger from the 4 thin, stringy fingers most people end up with, and it's why we only filled that bucket halfway to start. Here's the math. Ginger grows up and out near the surface. Every time you bury the base of those green stems in fresh soil, the plant pushes out new rhizome up into that new layer. It's the same principle Daniel uses on his potatoes. You hill them and they multiply. With ginger in a bucket, you do the same thing, just gently. Once your shoots reach 6 to 8 inches tall, you top dress. You add another 2-inch layer of that same compost and manure mix right over the base of the stems, leaving the green top sticking out. Then you wait, let it grow taller, and a few weeks later you add another 2 inches. You keep doing this through the season until you've gradually filled that bucket right up to the rim. Each layer is more room for more rhizome. That half-empty bucket from step 2 slowly fills with both soil and ginger. While it's growing, you feed it. Every 2 to 3 weeks, I give each bucket a drink of compost tea. Ruth's Liquid Gold, she calls it, diluted down to the color of weak coffee. I wouldn't argue with Ruth about anything, but especially not about that tea. It feeds the soil biology, and the biology feeds the plant. Through the hot summer, you keep the bucket evenly moist, never soggy, never bone dry. A finger in the top inch tells you if it's dry, water. If it's damp, wait. And this runs a long time. 8 to 10 months from the day those nubs woke up in March. By late summer, that bucket should be a fountain of green, 2 and 3 feet of leafy stems leaning out over the porch rail. Here's where most people mess up, and it's the big one. They never hill. They plant the rhizome, fill the bucket all the way at the start, water it, and walk away. The plant grows, but it has nowhere new to expand into. So you get a handful of thin stringy fingers come fall. Exactly the disappointing harvest everybody complains about. The hilling is the whole game. Skip it and you've wasted 10 months. But do it. Feed it, hill it, keep it warm and evenly watered through the summer, and by early fall, you'll have a bucket so packed with rhizome that the soil starts to crack and lift at the surface. That's the win for step 4. And it's the win that gives you Daniel's 4 pounds. Let me save you from the 3 mistakes that ruin most people's ginger, because I've watched all 3 happen. The first one starts before you ever plant. Most folks grab a knob of ginger from the grocery store, and a lot of that ginger has been treated with a sprout inhibitor to keep it looking fresh on the shelf. It either never wakes up or it sits in the bucket and rots. Buy organic seed ginger and pre-sprout it first, and you sidestep the whole problem. The second mistake is overwatering. Ginger likes to be moist, and people take that to mean wet, so they soak the bucket every day. A waterlogged bucket rots the rhizome from the bottom up, and you reach in come fall and pull out mush instead of root. The drainage holes in that free draining compost mix solve it. Keep the soil evenly damp, never soggy. The third mistake is the one Daniel sees most. People get impatient. They dig at 4 or 5 months because the leaves look full and they want to see what's down there. At 4 months, all you've got is a few thin, stringy fingers. That's the exact disappointing harvest everyone blames on the climate. Ginger needs the full 8 to 10 months to bulk up. Wait until the leaves yellow and fall and let it finish. Now, I told you at the start I'd share Daniel's simple trick for when to stop watering, and this is the part that decides whether your ginger comes out fat and firm or soft and disappointing. Here it is. In early fall, when the leaves begin to yellow and the tips start to brown, for me, here in Zone 6B, that's right around mid-September, roughly 8 to 10 months from when I started, and always before that October 15th to 20th first frost. Daniel cuts off the water completely. No more watering for the final 2 to 3 weeks before harvest. The bucket dries down, and here's why it works. When you stress the plant by drying it out, it stops putting energy into leaves and pushes its very last reserves down into the rhizome. At the same time, the lower water content in the tissue means the ginger firms up instead of staying spongy. You get denser root, more concentrated flavor, and ginger that stores hard for months instead of going soft in a week. I asked Daniel why he didn't just water right up to harvest, and he said, "You want it firm, Bill, you let it go thirsty at the end. Then you wait until the tops fully die back and you dig. Before I let you go, I want to come back to what happens after you pull that firm, cured ginger out of the bucket. A harvest like that only pays off if you can store it through the winter, and that's exactly what Ruth's chapter covers in my book, The 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. Chapter 10 walks you through Ruth's root cellar and her whole putting by system, the temperature and humidity that keep roots firm for months. The way she stores carrots in sand right through March. It's the same thinking that takes a single bucket of ginger and turns it into food that lasts. The book is $17 at backyardbillbooks.com. If you're watching on your TV, point your phone at the QR code on screen, or if you're on a phone or laptop, the link is right down in the description. Take a moment to pull that up. No rush. I'll be right here while you find it. So that's how Daniel gets close to 4 pounds of firm, storable ginger out of one 5-gallon bucket on his porch, the Amish way, by waking up the root, building living soil, planting shallow and warm, and hilling it all season long. Everything I share on this channel comes from 35 years of watching that garden across the field and asking the man who tends it. Try it on a single bucket this season and drop a note in the comments to let me know how it turns out. And if you want to see what this same Amish thinking does with potatoes, go watch the one where Daniel pulls 100 pounds out of a 4 square foot patch. It'll change how you use your space. I'll see you in the next one.